bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Purdy Insurance. Now from the Sunbury Motors Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Half hour brought to you by Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. Auto, home, life, business, boat, motorcycle, RV. They do a great job of making sure you're fully insured. Your needs are taken care of. Customer service means everything to them, and they'll also do everything they can to save you money. It's all at Purdy Insurance. Market Street in Sunbury, go to purdyinsurance.com. One of the great elements of the show for me is it allows me to stay in contact constantly with great people like Rich Scarcella. Rich, welcome back. Great to have you with us.
Thanks, Steve. Always good to be with you.
Okay, the spring can be about laying a foundation. You've at least had a chance to watch 2 full practices, and you've listened a lot to what Matt Campbell has had to say about his team. Are you getting the sense, either through observation when you've watched it or in listening to him and others, that they're laying a foundation?
I think that was the point that Matt was emphasizing Tuesday after practice when there was an availability. I think he's trying to stress that look, we're missing quite a few guys, and other guys have been limited, but we're about foundation, about how we do things, what we do, and really that's probably the only path he could take this spring, because they're keeping things very simple. He said that. They're just teaching the very basics. They think that would, I think he said it, to put in schemes would be, especially on defense, would be counterproductive. And I would agree with that. It's unique in a lot of ways this spring for Penn State. Not only do you have a new coach, you have a completely different roster with players from, I counted this morning when I wrote my story, 19 schools, including Penn State, trying to come together and mesh. And then you have a bunch of them who just aren't able to go full time. So it's a rather unique situation. And I think Matt, the approach he's taking and has taken is the right one.
How difficult is it today, because of the transfer portal, to really get a gauge in the offseason about which teams actually are really good and contenders versus those who might not be? Is it more difficult to get a gauge on that these days, in your opinion?
I don't think there's any doubt. I don't think there's any doubt or any question that it is. Yeah, I think I was just thinking about that about a half hour ago as I was thinking about what we were going to talk about. And you and I don't really, we just talk off the cuff, which I like. But I think that's a real factor here with the transfer portal and NIL it goes with it. I mean, Penn State has an experienced team. They have what I counted 21 players who started at least half their games last season for their respective teams. That we know. They're an older team. That we know. But again, it's meshing all those players together and learning the new system on offense and on defense. I mean, the offense for the 24 Iowa, well, they're not all offense, but for the Iowa State players on offense, the system is not entirely new. I'm sure there were tweaks from last year based on personnel and everything. Defensively with Dan Lynn, my guess is there's going to be a lot new. So it's going to take time, and it's hard to get a gauge on how Penn State is going to be. I think when they have everybody, I think they're going to be okay. Okay, what does okay mean in terms of wins? I don't know. Is that 8, 9, 10 wins? We'll see. And Penn State's not the only team going through this. So, Michigan has a new coach, a really good coach, like Penn State and Kyle Whittingham. So you really don't know how good these teams are until September 5th or whatever that Thursday is, the September 3rd, until the season begins.
Yeah, I'll give you the example I've used. It was actually a basketball example. I think a lot of people thought going into last season, that Michigan was going to be really good. They had a chance to be good. They had a great positional balance as to the players they got from Elliot Cadeau to Yaxel Lindenborg and so forth. But about a month into the season, you knew they were going to be really good. They're blowing out Gonzaga by 40 points. Indiana was thought to be really good, and their top 6 players were all seniors. And when Dick Girardi and I went out to Bloomington, and they beat Penn State with relative ease, all right? But we still, the two of us walked out of there, and the two of us looked at each other and said, they're really not that good. Right? And see, I just think it takes a month into a season to start actually figuring out who's good, because to your point, it's about meshing so many parts together, which coaches of the past did not have to do.
No. Steve, there's no better example of that in football than Indiana the last 2 seasons.
Yes.
Really. I mean, you nobody saw Indiana in 24. Nobody saw them going 11-1.
No.
Nobody saw last year them going unbeaten. I mean, because you just don't know. Because, you're going to tell me that people expected Fernando Mendoza to be the Heisman Trophy winner and tonight be the number 1 draft pick? No. Until you start playing the games and you have a better idea of things, you can do that. Unfortunately, I don't have to rank all the teams, but I write for Lindy's. I have for almost 30 years or over 30 years, whatever it's been.
Right.
And I've got to make a prediction for Penn State, and I'm sitting here right now, and I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to predict. But, I mean, I'll figure it out, but it's just there's just so many variables. There are so many variables, especially with Penn State, not only because of the coaching change and the transfers, but because you have so many players either out or limited.
What does the factor of Rocco Becht mean to you in that evaluation?
I think the more and more I hear other people in Lash Building talk about him, and then I had a chance to do a one-on-one interview with him Tuesday for Town and Gowns Football Annual, because I'm doing the story on him. You come away being more and more impressed with the type of player he is and the type of person he is. I mean, we talked about a lot of different things Tuesday, he and I, but, the word, Matt Campbell used it when I asked him about Taylor Mauser a few weeks ago. But Taylor Mauser used it Tuesday, and so did quarterbacks coach Jake Waters. Taylor Mauser, the OC, for those of you who don't know, the word is connector. And that Rocco Becht is a connector. And he connects with everybody, not just backs, receivers, offensive line. He connects with the defense, too. Maybe he learned that from his father, who was a star in Delaware County High School and West Virginia and in the NFL. I don't know. But the fact is, he connects with people. And I noticed that the first time we all on the Penn State beat met him back in February for that availability. He is a very engaging person. Very, I wouldn't say it's not necessarily dynamic, but just a very engaging person, very conversational. I've been really impressed with him. And then you look at his record, Steve, and he's a winner. And he said to me, I don't really care about my stats. I just want to win. He goes, that's all he cares about. And last year for him to go through what he did with the torn labrum and the sprained AC joint, among other things, and not miss a game, it tells you how tough he is, but also how much he cares about his teammates and his coaches. And I'm very impressed with him, and it's critical that he stays healthy for this season.
Yeah, because when I look at him, he's engaging like with us, but I see him around his teammates, and yeah, he's engaging with them, but he's also charismatic. And I think
charismatic is a better word. Yes, yes.
When it comes to them, when it comes to them, he's charismatic. With us, he's engaging. But you can see why they, they'll, the old "I'll run through the wall for you." The guy that's not charismatic, they measure the wall first to see if can I get through this thing?
Yeah.
That goes. When you're trying to put this together for Lindy's, what will be the holes that you feel if they fill them, it gives them a better chance of success? Like areas that work where you think has to be done. That's a hard question.
Yeah, great question. I'm just trying to think. I think, again, this isn't a reflection on anybody else, but it's important that Rocco stays healthy.
Yeah.
Okay. Because Alex Mansky, you don't know what you're going to have. They speak highly of him, the coaches do, but you really don't know exactly where he's going to be health-wise. You hope he's going to be ready. Okay. I think obviously they're good at tight end. They're really good and deep. I think the running backs, they may not have, maybe they don't have a 1,500-yard rusher, but I think their top three running backs are pretty good.
Yeah.
Then you go receivers. I like the receivers. I mean, Chase Sowell, and I'm going to pronounce his name wrong, and I met him, and he's named after Brett Favre, by the way. Brett Eskilson, did I say it right?
You got that one right, and it's Chase Sowell. And the only
Sowell, I didn't know that.
And no, you want to know why? You want to know why I know?
And Kobe Howard. Yeah.
You want to know why I know? Because after practice today, I asked him. I said, "How do I say your name?" That's so.
Sowell, Chase Sowell. See, I didn't know that. Okay.
So yesterday I couldn't have told you that. Today I can.
But so anyway, I'm going down the list, and I think offensive line has a chance to be good as long as Anthony Donko will be healthy.
Yep.
Cooper Cousins. You have Brock Reicher, the transfer from Texas State, who I think has the edge at center. And I'm trying to think, oh, my gosh, because these are all names. The injured offensive lineman from Iowa State.
Burr's one of them.
Yeah. So, I mean, I have a few questions on the offensive line because, again, that's a meshing thing. And then defense, I think edge-wise they're okay. I think in defensive tackle, let's see what happens there. But they're plenty deep at linebacker. I think they're plenty deep in the secondary. So, the question is, and this might sound unfair, but how do all those transfers, especially the ones who haven't played in the Big Ten, how does that convert to the Big Ten?
Right.
Because the Big Ten is stronger than the Big 12. I mean, it is. And so how do they translate to Big Ten competition? And I mean, I think there's plenty of experience there. And I think this will, obviously it'll be a very interesting thing to watch because it's all new. This is all fresh.
And I think something that could end up being a key for them, especially in the early going, because we don't know how they're going to move the ball. I mean, they could move the ball great and it'll be no factor. But getting Ryan Barker to stay, to give them some scoring range, I thought was one of the critical retention pieces that they had to have.
I couldn't agree with you more. No, I think we talked about it once since January on a call, and I agree with you 100%. I think that was very, very critical. He's one of the most accurate kickers in the country. Not just is. He was last year. And I think you're right. I think that's really important. And keeping Justin Lustig as a special teams coordinator didn't hurt either.
Yep. In fact, Mike Gooman and I were talking about that earlier today when we were out there because they were doing some special teams work. And I said keeping him and the continuity of it, I thought was really important. Has it been? Now, were you able to get up to the 2 full practices?
The first one I wasn't because I was sick as a dog. I was Yeah, but I did get up to the one on April 9th.
What did
yes.
You had a chance to be there for the entire practice. So let everybody know what you got out of that, because you saw the nuts and bolts of it, the exciting stuff as well as the stuff you got to get done.
Okay, so the things now, I'm not trying to analyze 70 guys, so I'm just watching. I'm trying to watch from 30,000 feet.
Yeah.
Okay, the first thing is, you hear, okay, we're not real deep, and okay, we're probably not going to have a spring game. We're going to have a practice. We're not going to have a game. And then you see there are only 3 tight ends on the field and only 3 running backs, and then you understand why, because it hits you in the face.
Yep.
That's one thing. The second thing is that we're not allowed in a lot of practice, haven't been allowed in practices, obviously, with Joe Paterno and Bill O'Brien and James Franklin. We only saw maybe 10 minutes. The defense rotation, defensive line, linebackers, secondary, there was a period or two they were rotating, but they were rotating. The coaches were staying where they were. The players were rotating like, oh gosh, the linebackers coach Tyson. I can't think of his. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Bate. Yeah, he's working with the secondary. The secondary coach is working with the defensive line, and the defensive line coach is working with the secondary. It was like, wait, what's going on here? And I noticed they went through a full thing. It wasn't all practice, but it was just interesting to watch. That was the second thing. The third thing
I think that was probably the tackle circuit. That probably was it.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, it was wild though how they moved.
Yep.
From position to position to position. Okay.
Yep.
Then the third thing is, number one, the 80s music. As part of it, the whole atmosphere. This is the atmosphere. And it was a lot quieter. It was more low-key than some of the 10-minute periods that we saw under James Franklin. Like, quieter in terms of coaching. And it just seemed a little more low-key. Not as, you just didn't hear a lot of voices. I mean, you heard some, of course, but not, like if you're on one end of the field, you didn't really hear the other end of the field. And that, I can't say that was always true. I'm not saying it was right or wrong, but they're the 3 biggest differences, Steve. The depth, you just noticed that right away. Mm-hmm. The rotation of the defense, and then the atmosphere itself. They're the 3 takeaways I had.
Yeah, that's why when they get to the preseason, and the vast majority of the guys that were not available or had limited availability in the spring should be ready to go when they get to the preseason. Now, to me, that's the point where, okay, how do the parts fit in all of this? Because let's just take a linebacker. Brezina, Ebel, and Bacon are all out there, and Cam Smith. But you know darn well that Tash and Rojas are critical parts to this, and stylistically they're a bit different, especially than Brezina and Bacon happen to be. And so it's going to be different when, like, the 3 running backs you talked about, they're 3 different styles of running back. They're not the same guy.
Yep.
Right? And so that's what I want to see is how do the guys that you integrate in, Rappleyea gets integrated in. How does he fit as a balance to Bramer? Things like that. Those are things I'm going to be interested to see how they all fit.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating. And you know what? Matt Campbell and his staff may not know yet until they see it.
That's right.
Until they see them together on the field. So I don't know anything here, but I'm just going to take a guess that I don't think there will be any open practices once the season starts. Maybe there might be one in August, maybe early in camp. I just can't. Just my feeling, my gut tells me that I just don't see that happening. And I'm not sure if practices are going to be open even for 10 minutes. So we'll see. We'll see.
Always a pleasure. Unscripted as always, and yet.
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
Oh, no. It's just two guys talking. And one's way more intelligent than the other, and I know who that one is.
Oh, no, stop.
Thank you, sir. Always a
Thanks,
pleasure.
Steve.
Appreciate it.
Take care.
The great
Bye
Rich
now.
Scarcella joining us on the show today. Half hour brought to you by our good friends at Purdy Insurance. Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. Here on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Hi, this is Season. For over 100 years, the Purdy Insurance Agency has been protecting families and businesses of the greater Susquehanna Valley and beyond. With the experience of our trained and knowledgeable staff, you can rest assured that your needs will be evaluated and met by some of the industry's best representatives. No matter what your insurance needs are, call Purdy Insurance today at 570-286-5855. Visit our website at purdyinsurance.com or check us out on Facebook to see what we can do for you.
Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Purdy Insurance. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
The outstanding Mark Wogenrich joins us, who found out that at 6 a.m. on I-78, heading eastbound, there's still a lot of trucks. Welcome.
Appreciate it, Steve. We really should have played golf yesterday, too. It was beautiful.
We should have. It would be great. So, you got a chance to watch, maybe not every minute of it, but the vast majority of yesterday's practice, a full practice. And it's also practice number 2 out of 15, and there are rules about pads and things like that. What was the general impression you got?
It was really interesting to be there for that long. About 90 minutes probably, or very close to it. And it felt to me like kind of an instructional summer camp in a way that you would see, like, high school kids going to a football camp in the summer where they're learning. And I mean that very specifically. It's not like it's a negative or anything, but that was practice 2 for a completely new football team. It probably should look something like that. You had groups kind of around Hullable Hall, position-wise. They were going through a lot of teaching. It felt like Matt Campbell was bouncing around to the position groups, doing some a little bit of individual work with guys, teaching stuff. I think he played kind of mimicked the role of quarterback at one point with going through an offensive line drill. Stanton Lynn was all over, his groups, doing a lot of teaching, from what I saw. Same thing with, Savant Huggins with the running backs, the receivers, Kashif Moore. Everybody. There just seemed to be a very instructional purpose to this, which really made sense and aligned with what Matt Campbell said on Tuesday after their first practice, is that he wants to go, I think the framing was slow and right, I think was the term he used, because it's just there's so much new that they're introducing between just, coaching staff, players. I think it's 55 new players on this roster from the portal and the recruiting class, and you can't expect everybody to be up to speed. It's like drinking from a fire hose after 2 practices. So that's what it felt like to me. There, the music was lower. There wasn't a lot of screaming and shouting, that sort of thing. It didn't feel like it didn't look like what it's going to look like in August, September, October, or whatever. It really did feel like the very beginning.
How much did it feel before they put in concepts? I know Danton's kind of doing this. That I want to know what a bunch of people that I really haven't seen a lot of, what can they do, and probably what they can't do. Did you sense that was part of the process of what we saw yesterday? They were trying to see what they could and couldn't do?
Yeah, very much so. Specifically, you saw that in some of the defensive players, obviously, the way they were going through some of the team drills, the offensive line. that probably, to me anyway, just a quick glance that I saw, seemed to be at least the most maybe up to date, at least from like a first line perspective. There's still players who are out. I mean, obviously we didn't see Anthony Donko, who's going to be out this spring. So you would think he's going to be that right tackle. Maybe they'll work him on the left side too. But it just felt like, at least from the first line kind of group, that they had that in a way, they had that set. But from like other perspectives, personally, I did not expect to see Rocco Beck throwing as much as he did. I just maybe the way that Matt Campbell framed it, he's not going to do the teamwork, and he's not going to go through the live, or he's going to do the teamwork but not the live drills. But to me, it just like he threw a lot. He was really involved in. I thought in a lot of those passing drills. I liked his arm. I liked the way he threw the ball. I liked the way he led that group too. The way they started, they were just doing some warm up drills, and he was even going through that with some of the younger quarterbacks, because without having Alex Nansk there, the other transfer from Iowa State, or is going to miss some time this spring. The other three scholarship quarterbacks with him haven't thrown a Division I pass yet. I mean, Cannonberry from Division III, Christopher Newport, and then the two freshmen coming in. So he is Rocco Beck is kind of just like almost a grad assistant with those guys too, while he is also getting up to speed with his new receivers, the guys he didn't play with last year. He doesn't have a couple guys who he did play with in Chase Sowell and Bretta Skildson. They weren't catching passes from him. So he's got a lot of newness too, but he really seemed to be in that leadership position. He seemed to be really taking a role in that. And then one thing that really struck me was guys who are not practicing. They were not just standing. I didn't see that at all. Two guys in particular were the returning linebackers, Alex Tash and Tony Rojas. Yeah. They did team drills, no helmets, but they were doing kind of a walkthrough piece with the defense. And then as we were leaving, Penn State was running. I think it was just like a punt drill, and Matt Campbell's behind the punt unit, sitting in the end zone, and he was flanked by Tash and Rojas. I don't know how much special teams they're going to play this year, but they almost seemed to be going through pantomiming the reps that they were going to be taking. They were really involved. They were a lot more. That's one of those things. It's like guys felt more involved to me in doing stuff when they weren't on the field. Those two in particular really struck me at how involved they were in several aspects of the game without being on the field, really.
Matt Campbell, in his press conference after Tuesday's practice, a player that he singled out with praise was Zion Tracy. You had a chance to watch him yesterday in various spots. What's your thought on him?
Yeah, it's hard to gauge because, again, they just weren't doing a whole lot, at least team perspective. Like in the individual drills, Zion looked really polished. It's kind of what we saw a bit last year, but I think he looked even a bit more polished than he would have. And the quick glimpses I saw, you could see that emerging already in their trust in him in multiple positions. Like, I think he did line up as a free safety in a walkthrough and at corner at one point. So it looks like he's going to be looking, he and Danton Lynn are going to be looking for players who can modulate their way around the back seven of that defense. And I think I think Marcus Neal was another player who Matt Campbell referenced, the safety coming over from Iowa State, who could do something like that. And I think you saw, his size, I think he's around 6'1", 220, something like that he could do stuff like that too. Maybe even a guy like Jamison Patton, who we got to talk to afterward, that he could roam. I think this is where Danton, I think, is really good, or at least he's shown that he's really good over the course of his his college coaching career. And Terry Smith mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, that Danton takes pieces and puts him in the puzzle rather than looking at the puzzle and working backward.
Right.
He does not have a complete vision of his defense because he's identifying players just the same way players are identifying his defense. So you could see him working kind of through that through the course of at least that back half of the session that we were able to see some of that stuff yesterday.
You did get a chance to talk to some players yesterday. What was your general impression?
They seem to be on board both ways. New guys and the Iowa State transfers with the morning session, good for them. It's great when you can go 5 minutes to practice instead of me, coming like 2.5 hours away and got to leave at 6:30 in the morning to get there. But they do seem to be on board. Cooper Cousins spoke positively of that, and he's used to the afternoon sessions. I still feel like there's a sense of coming together. Like these guys still are learning about each other. There's a lot of players who are new, and Matt Campbell made the point that by having him practice in the morning, he's kind of bookending practice around 2 meals of those guys together, breakfast and lunch, and so he's kind of force feeding them in a way together a little more by having the morning practice. Anything you can do to get guys together. And then I know one really interesting thing that Deion Broomfield said. He's a safeties coach, in talking about Denton Lynn, is that he said Denton came in using the phrase obnoxious communication, which means he wants guys over communicating. He's going to do it. He wants the position coaches to do it. Excuse me, and he wants players to do it too, because he's teaching them new terminology, or at least kind of importing some new terminology or fitting that in with what Matt Campbell wants to do. It's going to be different than what they did last year. So the more talking they're going to do and the more explaining they're going to do is going to be important. And that's interesting coming from a person like Denton Lynn, who at least publicly, I don't know what he's, like in the team rooms and coaching rooms, but at least publicly is a bit reticent to be kind of obnoxiously communicative. So I found that very interesting for Denton Lynn to use that phrase specifically.
You also walked in yesterday ready with a roster, and you walked in with the positional roster. As a reporter who got used to, I'll give you the joke I gave Matt the other day. I said, geez, Rojas is out, Tash is out, Donko's currently out. Trying to remember what the other guy was. And I said, I said, Matt, those are the 4 guys I know. I said, what's going on here? But it's the same for everybody going to cover. So what was it like for you, and how often did you have to look at that sheet to say, okay, 21's Hansen, 23 of Peoples? I mean, what was that like for you?
It was perpetual. I mean, I'm watching the running backs going, okay, I know Cam Wallace and Quentin Martin Jr. are, but who are the other guys? The quarterbacks, I look at the quarterbacks go, I could pick out Rocco, but the rest of them, I don't know. I quickly, that's why I quickly kind of came to learn, okay, Connor Berry, I think he was 17. I know him, he's the left-hander, that sort of thing.
Yep.
Defense, completely new. And even offensive line, everybody's new. They switched jerseys on us, too. They made that switch. Blue is offense this year, and white is going to be defense.
Did I prepare you?
Guys who were there last year, the veteran reporters said, oh, God, that's another thing. Another curveball they threw us. So that was completely so that was new. That was difficult. So it was kind of a fun challenge to just put together that puzzle of who's who. I remember asking, we had the players available in February, and I remember asking guys walking around with name tags. And I thought they might, it might actually be happening. A couple of guys laughed and said, no, we're kind of past that now. But, I can't imagine the coaching staff. They're really good if they can go number name by now in practice too. That would be really impressive. They're learning their way through it too.
But I think you were the one I told, but there were a couple of people around. I said, be prepared. Defense is now white and offense is blue.
Yeah.
I think I did tell you that. Right. I was just trying.
Yeah, you did. And I caught that from the video too. So a couple of videos they posted on social media. So I caught that, and I thought, okay, just remember that, keep that in mind. But, things like quarterbacks' purple jerseys, that kind of thing.
Right.
You got to get that framed because I think they were wearing red before. that just little stuff like that, and that's new for them. But for the returning players, those little things, they're not. I don't think they're going to be huge. They're not like huge issues, but they're just like stuff you got to get used to.
Yeah, no, I mean, just something, because I remember when Davian Collins walked out on Tuesday, and of course he has a white jersey on, and I know what Davian Collins looks like. I'm like, okay, he wasn't switched to offense. I said he must have changed up. They're not switching him to offense. Did you get a chance to talk with either Trevor Burr or Ryan Clanton yesterday?
I did get to Ryan Clanton. He's so much fun. I think he is he's a fascinating person. He really has kind of this I was not born as a football player kind of mentality. I mean, he discussed that he is a junior high, I think he started playing football in junior and high school, wasn't highly recruited, and really turned himself into a football guy who I think he's got a real intuitive sense of how offensive linemen play. He's one of them. And offensive line coaches usually do have that intuitive, like I was one of you sense. You really need it to coach there. But he has this, I think he's got a switch that these guys are responding to. Cooper Cousins, and both he and Malachi Goodman yesterday really seemed to be receptive with the message that he was giving them about the combination of technique and violence. That he's an offensive line coach. He's footwork, hand placement. He is all that. He is going to teach all of that sort of thing, but he wants you to come at it from a mentality that you are a violent person on the offensive line. When you are playing that position on the field, that you have to be violent, you have to be an attack person. I think the phrasing, I can't remember exactly what it was, but he was like saying it's being I think like a human shield or a missile, something like that. Yeah. Paraphrasing his the terminology he was using, but he brings kind of a refreshed approach in that sense, in being a very involved in kind of in front of these guys' faces about being that kind of player, about bringing that mentality before he can even get to them, to teach them where to put their hands, where to put their feet, how to move their hips, all of that sort of stuff. And even at one point he said, if you don't have it, you're going to have to get it, regarding that mentality. He's he's fascinating. He's a real interesting guy. And I think when we got him in February, he said he's a big Yelp reviewer guy. Like he goes out, he does a lot of Yelp reviews when he goes out to eat. So, look for him if you're reading around, look for Yelp reviews in State College.
Malachi Goodman's a big man. Without
He is, and he's a thicker guy now too.
Yeah.
He is put together. He really is.
When you talk to the players about the off-season strength and conditioning program, every strength and conditioning program and the leader of it has their own way of doing it. Some of the same things, but also their own way of doing it. Have you received any impression about what the returning players from Penn State thought about how they went about S&C during the February and early March part?
I got a sense that it wasn't hugely different from kind of what Dwight Galt had installed, and then went through the previous strength coach. Oh my gosh,
Craig Fitzgerald.
Help me out, Steve. Handlebar mustache. Yeah.
Oh, you're talking about Chuck Losey?
I'm Chuck. Yeah. Great. The one thing that I did get from them is that I think they appreciated at least maybe a smoother transition in that sense, and that they were competitive. I think it was Chuck was competitive. Chuck had competitive periods too, but they liked the fact that they retained the competitive process of going through strength and transition, or the S&C program, but also that they're kind of broken into teams, and I think each team had captains, and it would go through they would do competitive periods in the winter conditioning, but that extended out too into showing up on time for class and showing up on time for meetings, things like that, being late, whatever. And if you didn't, you had to either clean the locker room, sweep out, vacuum out, do stuff like that. So there were almost circumstances that these guys had to face, or almost like a punishment kind of thing that they had to be corrected, to do if their team finished last in one of these competitive segments. So I found that to be, I think that was one of the things that Matt Campbell and his staff had installed to try to bring players together more, blend them a little bit more, and not just have cliques of Penn State guys, Iowa State guys, and the other transfer feeling left out, or maybe they gather together too. So I think that's what it felt like. Maybe just a more a holistic plan about strength and conditioning of bringing guys together under competitive banner too.
Always a pleasure, and glad in the battle against the trucks you backed off. Okay, I appreciate it.
I did indeed. Too many of them at 6:30 in the morning, Steve.
Smart man. You're the best. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thanks. Even a couple of weeks. Appreciate it.
Yep. The outstanding Mark Wogenrich. Half hour brought to you by our good friends at Purdy Insurance. Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com on News Radio 1070 WKOK.